lights are going out.
All right, I've got it open. I don't see anything yet.
Hey. Okay. I see something. Does everybody see something? Oh, yay. Okay, so I put myself on mute, so I hopefully won't hear myself. So hi, my name is Megan Coffey. I work at the Newton Free Library, and I'm so excited, thrilled, and a little overwhelmed to have with us today we have four, because we have four student moderators, and we also have the wonderful author Jennifer De Leon with us today, and she's going to talk to us about her book, Don't Ask Me Where I'm From. I think you can also talk about your other book, White Space, that just came out too. It came out in March, if you want to read it. And we're super excited to have you here today. I'm gonna pass it to the students. Should we explain the Padlet now, or should we explain that? Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay, all right. So why don't I pass it to Ashlyn and Tiana, and you can introduce yourself.
Okay, so hi, my name's Ashlyn St. Prue. I am a junior, graduating next year, and I'm in the METCO program, and I've been in the METCO program since kindergarten.
And my name's Tiana. I go to Newton North. I'm a junior as well, and I've been in the METCO program since kindergarten as well.
Hi, my name is Danielle. I'm a senior at Newton South, and I've been in the METCO program since kindergarten.
Hi, my name is Destiny. I'm not a part of the METCO program, but I did come from a school in New Jersey for high school.
Okay, and then I'm Jennifer Dimmick, one of the librarians at Newton South High School, and delighted to have you all here, especially our author.
And I'm Erin Dahlbeck. I'm one of the librarians at Newton North, and I'm really psyched to have Ms. De Leon here. We are going to be putting up a Padlet. So if you are in the audience and you'd like to ask a question, there's a QR code on the Padlet. You can scan it. And even if you don't have a question right now, during the event, if anything comes to you that you'd like to ask, you can put it on that, and then we'll be putting it into the webinar chat. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see that. Oh, let's see. You're seeing something different. There we go. So that's what the Padlet looks like, and I'm going to give you 15 seconds to put your phone up to the screen and scan that QR code. And then if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask those questions. It should be noted also that this webinar is being recorded. So in the future, if you didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, you'll be able to do that. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and you can take it away.
Destiny, I think we're off to you.
If the camera keeps turning off, it's because the Wi-Fi is super bad at my house, but that's why the camera keeps coming off. All right, so to introduce, born in the Boston area to Guatemalan parents, Jennifer De Leon is the author of Don't Ask Me Where I'm From and the editor of Wise Latina Authors. Sorry about that wrong. Wise Latina Writers on Higher Education. After a decade of teaching in Boston public schools, she is now an assistant of professors of creative writing at the Framingham State University and a faculty member in the MFA in Creative Nonfiction program at Bay Path University. Her essay collection, White Space, Essay on Culture, Race, and Writing, is the recipient of the Juniper Prize and was recently, sorry, it cut off. Recently, Sorry. All right. Moral of the story is we'd like to welcome Jennifer DeLeon. We're very excited to have you here today and can't wait to learn about you.
Thank you so much, Destiny, Ashleen, Tiana, and Danielle. And I want to make sure that I said all your names right. So can you let me know if I didn't? We're good? All right, wonderful. And thank you, Megan and Jen and Erin, for coordinating this event and for inviting me. This is really a great opportunity and one of my favorite things to do, which is to connect with readers and especially with students. So I'm really excited to be here. I wanted to share a little bit about myself and my path towards becoming a published author, and then share some of my inspiration for writing Don't Ask Me Where I'm From, and then read a scene so that you can get to experience Liliana for yourselves. In my bio, Destiny mentioned that I was born in the Boston area to Guatemalan parents. Both of my parents grew up in Central America and moved to the United States when they were around 18 years old. And they really came to this country with 3 goals. They wanted their future kids to go to college. They also wanted to own a house. And they really wanted to have us have the freedom to do whatever we wanted in life. My father always said, study hard so that you don't have to get a job where you work with your hands, because he worked in a factory. He spray painted computer parts for decades in a factory. And my family didn't even own a computer. So it's kind of ironic that that's what he did all day. And my mother was a housekeeper for almost 4 decades. So they definitely worked with their hands. And they wanted us to have jobs where we didn't have to do that. But as I remind my father all the time, the irony is that I'm an author and I use my hands every day when I'm writing. So he didn't get around that. I also wanted to share with everyone the fact that I did not do METCO. I was not in a METCO program. I grew up in Framingham, so very close to Newton. Basically, when I was 2 years old, my family moved from Jamaica Plain to the suburbs, to Framingham. And it was smaller then. It was a town, not a city. And it was still predominantly white during the 80s. And my sisters and I grew up, we had that kind of quintessential American dream. My parents did get that house, the white picket fence. They were able to, enroll us in schools where they felt really happy about our education. But I will say that what they didn't expect and what we couldn't have known to expect is the fact that everyone but us was white. And I mean everyone, all of my friends, all of my teachers, all of my neighbors, even the janitor was white, like Liliana says in the book. And that was fine because I didn't know any different, right? My friends were my friends. I did Girl Scouts, I played soccer. It was all good. But as I got older, I started to realize the differences between the way I was growing up and the way my cousins were growing up. Because every weekend, my parents and my sisters and I got in the car and we drove to Boston and we hung out with my tias, my tios, my abuela, my cousins. And we would fill tiny apartments and we would be super loud and eating tons of food and passing around a baby and just being kind of, crazy. And it was incredible and I loved it. But I never fully felt like I belonged in either space. So during the week, I was white Jen. I played lacrosse. I took honors classes. I studied French instead of Spanish. And I felt maybe too Latina. And I felt like I was on the receiving end of so many microaggressions from well-meaning adults, but still microaggressions. People asking me if I needed financial aid applications for college, or asking me if I could help them with their Spanish homework, or, assuming that I wasn't born in this country. And of course, the question, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you really from? And no matter what answer I gave, it wasn't good enough. And then when I was in Boston, my cousins had no problem making me feel like I was too white to be hanging out with them, to be in Boston, to be with all my family. They would call me gringa. They'd call me white girl. They'd say, why are you always reading? You have a lot of homework. And I'd say, I like reading. It's not even homework. And that's how I started to kind of have this double consciousness, like Du Bois said, right? I was living in two realities, even though I was just my one self. When I got to college, it only became worse in the sense that if I thought Framingham was white, Connecticut College was super white and affluent. And I made some of the best friends of my life, but we were very different and had very different backgrounds. I remember one day thinking, I need money. I need to get a job. And so I said to my friends, you know what? I really need I need money. And they said, oh my God, I know I need money too. And I thought, okay, maybe we're not so different. And then one of them said, let's go to the ATM at the campus center. And I was like, oh my God, that's not what I meant. I don't even have a bank card. I don't even have an account. Like, what is that? When I had a paper due, I would stay up and work on it, or I'd go to the writing center, or I would turn it in and not get maybe a great grade because I was new to writing at the college level. Whereas some of my friends were able to email their parents and say, hey, Dad, can you look at this and edit it and just like send it back? Their parents were federal court judges and professors and lawyers. And my parents didn't graduate 8th grade, but we were in the same place, in the same space, and we had earned our right to be there. And I remember calling my mother one day early in freshman year when I was crying, and I thought, I just can't do this. This place is just too different. I don't think I'm meant to be here. I called her crying, and she listened, and then she said, first of all, you're not coming home. She said, but second of all, I want you to remember this. Those kids that you're with in class, maybe they have fancy laptops and fancy jackets and the latest sneakers, but you are in the same space, and they went to boarding school. Their parents went to college. They're not first generation, all of this, and you're in that same place. And she said, and you speak another language, 2 languages, Spanish and French, and you're there and you deserve a spot to be there. And I'll never forget that conversation. It really made me pivot and turn and think about how I viewed myself and my role in college. And I started slowly but surely to take up space. And I raised my hand in class. I joined clubs. I studied abroad in 12 different countries. I went to Vietnam, France, Nigeria, and I just felt like I'm in college. This is what I meant to do. So I'm going to try and do it all. And writing was something that I did all the time. I wrote in journals. I filled notebooks because the journal never talked back to me. And if I had questions or problems, I would always write. But I didn't know how to become a published author. I didn't know any writers of color. The first book I read by a Latina author was freshman year in college. It was called House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. Maybe you've all read it. It's been around now for 30, 40, 50 years, I think. And once I read that book, I felt like the world was open to me. I couldn't believe you could write in English and Spanish. I couldn't believe you could have characters that sounded and spoke and acted like my parents, my family. And so something shifted in me, but it was still going to be a really long road because, again, I didn't have a blueprint. I didn't know anybody who had done this before me. And to be honest, I felt really guilty about pursuing a career in the arts because my parents had sacrificed so much. I felt like the least I could do is be a doctor or be a lawyer and buy them a house or something, right? But my passion was to be a writer. And they knew that. And that's part of why they came to the United States. So they encouraged me in ways that they could and cheered me on. And whenever I took a writing class or published an essay or a short story, they celebrated with me. And little by little, I learned more about the writing path and how one can become an author. What is an agent? What is an editor? How much do you get paid to write a book? Do you get paid at all? How does it work? And so part of what I want to do now is to demystify the writing process for young people. So if you have questions about writing, I hope you're getting them ready. Ask me anything. But so how does Liliana come into the picture? As I shared, I was writing and I thought that I needed to write like someone else in order to publish a book. I thought that I needed to write like a dead old white man, like Ernest Hemingway or Richard Yates or James Salter. And don't get me wrong, I love work by these authors, but they were writing about different things and they were writing in a different voice. And at the time, I was teaching in Boston Public Schools. I was teaching middle school ELA, and I had so many students that I knew wanted to connect through stories, to see themselves reflected on the page. But it was really hard to find books where they could see themselves. And Toni Morrison has this amazing quote where she says, if there's a book in the world that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you need to be the one to write it. And so that's how I started writing Don't Ask Me Where I'm From. I wanted to write a book that centered a Latina character, a 15-year-old in Boston, someone who sounded like my students, someone who felt a little bit like me growing up. So I put her in the METCO program. Again, I never did METCO, but as I explained, I felt like I was living in two worlds. So I thought, okay, I'll put Liliana in METCO and I'll fictionalize the town. So she lives in Boston and goes to school in Westburg. And the reason I did that is because I wanted it to be fiction. I didn't want anybody in a real town saying, wait, that's not how it is here. But anyway, she's also dealing with a lot of drama. She's got her mom drama, her little brothers, Christopher and Benjamin drama, her best friend Jade drama, her new best friend Holly drama, her teachers are on her back. She's got this new boy, Dustin, in her life. All the while, her father is missing. Well, she thinks he's missing, but really he has been deported to Guatemala. And up until this moment, she had no idea that her parents were even undocumented. So this is a real coming of age novel. It's also one where she experiences racism. Someone posts a picture of her face on a piñata and writes the words, "Go back where you're from," and it goes viral. And she has to decide what to do in that moment. So I won't ruin the end for you, but I really wanted a book where I went there. I wanted the book that I needed as a young person and that I felt like my students could relate to. So I'm thrilled to be here today and talk about the book, about the writing process, about my latest book that just came out last month, White Space. This is nonfiction, so it's true. All the personal essays are about me being in white spaces much of my life, but also it's about the white space of the page and learning to take up space and claim that space in publishing. So let's get talking because I've been talking long enough. I want to hear your questions and I want to hear your stories, and let's do it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Everything you were saying, I was like comparing with you when you were talking about gringa, because I'm Dominican, so all those words I was like, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about, like right from the start. But we have a bunch of questions that we lined up to ask you. So Ashlyn and Tiana, are you guys going up first?
Yeah, one of the first questions is what made you want to be a writer? Like what really pushed you? Like you, as you said before, like you said that you've always liked writing, but what was something that you remember that really pushed you? Like, this is what I'm meant to do.
Ooh, such a great question. Oh my goodness. It's hard to pin down one moment, but I will tell you that I always felt like being in that role of being an outsider, I think prepared me to be a writer because I felt like I was like watching my own life, like from the corner of the room. And I would watch my tias, my tios, and my sisters, everybody, like they were characters. And I started to write stories where they were in them and essays. And some of them were true, some of them weren't. But I felt like I had plenty of inspiration. Like, oh my God, let me tell you about this one uncle, and or my cousin, or, I just felt inspired by real life. So I started that way, writing things down. And when I was 16, I participated in a community service program. I went to Zimbabwe and I helped to build a medical clinic And that experience really cracked open my world. I mean, I thought I was aware of globalization and international relations. And, my parents were from Guatemala. We had gone there many times, but this was very eye-opening. And I think I really pressed the gas on my writing when I went to Africa.
So next question is, how did the idea of this novel come to be? Like, when did you start writing? When did you finish the whole writing process?
Yeah. I started writing this novel, actually, it was set originally in the 90s because that's when I was a teenager, and I wrote it in third person. And I went to a conference, a writing conference, and I met with an editor, and she said, "Have you considered writing this contemporary and in first person?" And I thought, oh, no way, I can't do that. I don't know what a teenager sounds like today. And first person, that's like so intimate. I just don't think I can do it. And she said, just consider it. So I went back home and I started writing from Liliana's voice. And it's like she took the mic and did not let go. She had so much to say, and nothing was happening in this scene. She was just riffing off her jeans and how they're tight and how her mom never does laundry anymore and how her little brother is on her back and he's always playing video games. And this voice kind of came out. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, I've been teaching in Boston. I feel like I just have to imagine what my students sound like. And it was fun because they're great and they had so much to say and they're funny. So I just kind of channeled that and I rewrote the entire draft. I had a fellowship at the Boston Public Library. This is something that I never knew. You can earn fellowships and people pay you to work on your writing. So I got $20,000 and a key to an office of my own in the Boston Public Library in Copley Square for 10 months. And I was able to work on my draft. And it was a dream come true. So I worked on the draft then. And then that following year, I got another residency through the city of Boston. Boston's great for the arts. So if you want to pursue a career in the arts, you don't have to go far. And once I had a final draft, I submitted it to an agent, a literary agent, and she helped me submit it to editors, mostly in New York. And there were 10 editors interested in the book, which meant that I had a lot of phone calls over 2 weeks. And we ended up choosing one editor. And then the book wouldn't come out for another 2 years. So it takes a long time sometimes, but they help you with every step of the process, and it was well worth it.
So the next question is, what made you want to write about the METCO experience, as well as in a point of view of a Latina teen girl?
Yeah, well, I hadn't read so many books with a Latina main character, and I wanted to center the story on her experience. And I was always drawn to METCO because when I was growing up in Framingham, we did have the METCO program. They don't have it now, but they did then. And I remember being curious about this program. Like, wait a minute, why do people have to take a bus to go to another school? And sometimes teachers would think, they would assume I was in METCO and they would say like, hurry, get on the bus. The METCO bus is leaving. And I would say like, I'm not in METCO. I can walk home from here, but I would start to think, why do they assume I'm in METCO? What program is this? Who's it for? Why do we need it? I didn't understand how education worked in terms of taxes and property rights and segregation and desegregation. I would learn all that much later, but all I knew was that it wasn't fair. And so I became a teacher. I did Teach for America, and then I got my master's in teaching. I taught in Boston for almost a decade, and I wanted to put Liliana in METCO because I felt like a lot of people, even though METCO has been around for over 50 years, a lot of people don't know about it. And they don't realize that it's in 33, as of now, it's in 33 districts around Boston. And so I wanted to lift up this story and just bring some attention to it,
I totally understand where you're coming from, where like people would say, "Oh, get on. Why are you on the METCO bus?" Like, a lot. Even though I do live in Newton, I'm not a part of METCO, but I feel like a big part of it has to do with like racism, even though not it's the truth. Like they just assume because I have curly hair and like many people who are in METCO, you know, are Black, Hispanic. They don't really see like a lot of white folks. So I totally understand where you're coming from. Which leads me to my next question. How did you go about finding the voice of the main character while writing this novel?
I love that question because voice is so important to any story, and I knew I had to get it right. You know, I just felt like I'll do whatever it takes. And I interviewed students in METCO at Lincoln Sudbury. I shadowed them, so I would just walk around with them to class and just kind of be like a spy. And I met with teenagers at the Copley Square branch at the BPL. And sometimes we'd have pizza or iced tea. They love iced tea. I don't know what the big thing was with iced tea, but they told me like, no milk, miss. Nobody likes milk. I'm like, okay. And I would ask them questions like, would a METCO student do this? Would a teenager do this? What would her relationship with her best friend really be like? And they gave me so many tips, and I learned so much because I had my own perspective, but I needed young people to read it and tell me where I was getting it wrong, especially with the slang. I had a young a friend of mine, her son, who was 16. He read the book and he was telling me all about like some of the slang, Aggie and hip, and you know all the sayings. So I felt like, all right, I'm going to try. I'm going to put it in there. And what readers tell me is that they're like, I've never read the word Aggie in a book before, and it makes me happy because why not? Aggie is a word. It could be in a book.
In what ways is Liliana a reflection of you? And do you have any stories that are like very similar to you and Liliana?
Oh yeah, Liliana and I share a lot in common in the sense that we're both Latina. Our parents are from Central America. I don't have any brothers. I have two sisters, but she's got the two younger brothers. Um, I didn't have that experience growing up where I worried about my parents being deported. Both my parents became citizens of the United States before my sisters and I were born. So I didn't have that specific experience, but I have many family members who have had that experience and also many students. And I did a lot of research. You know, I read a lot, talked to a lot of people, tried to understand what a young person would be feeling in this scenario. And Liliana is fierce. She's super brave. I mean, she's shy at the beginning, but then she finds her voice. She definitely has an attitude. And I think growing up, I did a little bit, not as much as her maybe, but I also felt lost like her. I wanted to fit in, but I didn't really know how. And I also wanted to learn more about my culture and my family's history, but I didn't know how. I didn't know how to start. And like her, when her Theo and Thea come visit from Guatemala, oh, I mean, that happened like every month in my house. You know, it was like there were always people coming and going, but that's the joy of it too. Like you get to know a greater world by interacting with family members from other parts of Las Americas, you know, and understanding more about where you're from can really help propel you to where you're going. And Liliana, you know, she really likes art. And in the book, she makes these cardboard miniatures, right? So she'll take like cereal boxes or Kleenex boxes and she'll make little houses or salons. So I didn't do anything that artistic, but I definitely love to write. And I know she loves to write too. She goes to 826 Boston, but I didn't have anything like that growing up. I wish I had.
So you kind of already answered part of this question relating to like speaking with students in the METCO program. And were you surprised at any of the responses to the questions you asked them? And did you see any like similarities and differences between when you were a teenager versus now?
Yes. Wow, that's a great question. You know, a lot of the students all of them were so gracious and brave and sharing, and they were vulnerable and they trusted me. And I feel so honored that they did. But what it also told me was that they were really craving a space in which to do that. They were hungry to have this community where they could vent, they could express their ideas, they could just talk. And once they started, it was like hours, like, we got to go, like they would just tell me, oh, one time this happened, or in class, this girl said this, and you won't even believe what happened here, and I just felt like they had a lot that they wanted to share. And I hope this isn't the only book about METCO. Like, why should there be one book? We can fill a shelf with books by METCO. I hope you write books about METCO, and other things. It's not like one and done kind of thing. And so, yeah, they surprised me in the sense that I thought we had come, I guess, further along in the anti-racism continuum. And I was kind of surprised and sad to hear that a lot of the same scenarios were still happening as were when I was in high school. And, that's a little disheartening, but I also heard other stories where people were speaking up more and were really taking up space. And I also was happy to hear about white allies. That's not something that we really had language for when I was growing up, at least. It wasn't on my radar. It was almost like in the 90s, people were still a little bit trying to just pretend race didn't exist. Like, we were just trying to fit in. Like, I'm colorblind. I don't see anybody. Everybody's the same. You can be purple. It doesn't matter. And now we realize how problematic that is. Like, that's not good. That doesn't make sense. We want to see our differences, but we don't want to see them as negative. We want to see them as positives. We want to celebrate our differences and our similarities. So I think that what I'm really not surprised, but happy to see is how many students, resident students and white students are coming up to me at readings or on Zoom and saying, like, wow, I learned a lot in this book. Like, I didn't realize what it was like for METCO students, right, on the daily. Like, they have to get up at 5 a.m, or they maybe can't do that event on the weekend. I mean, you guys are in Newton, it's a little easier, but some students are way out in Cohasset or other towns where it's too far. And so I welcome those conversations, though.
Thank you. So our next question is, why did you choose to set the scene of the story in current times, like with the social media and like the last presidency?
Yes. When the election results came out in 2016, like many other people, I felt stepped on. I felt like I needed to do something. I needed to take action in a way that I hadn't before, because suddenly the stakes were sky high and I felt like the clock was ticking and I couldn't wait anymore. And so that's part of why I wrote this book too. And I really wanted to address a lot of what was happening in our country as far as racism and stereotypes and images of a single story for what immigrants look like and sound like and are like. And I thought that by writing this counter story that I could give readers a different perspective, right? Like a different window than what maybe they were seeing on the news at 5 o'clock every day. And so that was really important to me, then, to set it in contemporary times. And I never name President 45, but I describe him a little bit. And I think people know who I'm talking about. And the reality is that I think young people are incredibly smart and talented and able to grapple with these issues and themes, and they deserve to have it in literature that they're consuming, and be able to talk about these issues. So based on that, I really wanted to kind of go there and have maybe people be a little shocked at what they were reading and understand like, no, this actually happens. And with that, I think I'll read a scene from the book where Liliana is in her world history class. And like in many of her classes, she's one, if not the only person of color in the room. I mean, have you all experienced that where you're the only person of color in the room? I mean, yeah, right. I have like all the time. So they're doing this unit on Central American immigration, and she's interested, but kind of like, oh God, everybody's gonna look at me now. So here we are in this scene. I was kind of curious. Maybe I could learn more about, I don't know, how my family got here, about dad. At the same time, I didn't want the extra attention on me because sadly, it didn't seem like there were any other METCO kids in the class. So I knew the attention would be on me. Our teacher, Mr. Phelps, started things off by holding a class debate. First, he projected this onto the whiteboard from his computer. The United States federal government should substantially increase its legal protection of economic migrants in the United States. He read it out loud a couple of times. All I could hear was the hot hum of his laptop. Why was he showing us this? Because of the president's build a wall obsession? What kind of a wall anyway? And who would actually build it? Okay, if getting our brains spinning was his goal, he'd succeeded. As if he'd read my mind, Mr. Phelps tapped his keyboard and up came a picture of the president wearing a blue suit and red tie and speaking into a microphone. A speech bubble said, "We want a great country. We want a country with heart. But when people come up, they have to know they can't get in. Otherwise, it's never going to stop." What? I glanced around, but no one else seemed as outraged as I was, or else they had freaking good poker faces. Next, Mr. Phelps played a short clip from a documentary about child migrants trying to flee Central America to the US by climbing cargo trains that traveled up through Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico. In the clip, two teenage boys were lying on top of a massive train, the wind flattening their hair, the sun in their eyes, as they tried desperately to hang on tight as the train blasted through a tunnel in a mountain. I gasped out loud. The clip ended right before the train moved into the darkness. This time, everyone moaned. Someone shouted, "Oh, come on, you can't do that. Play the rest of the video." Mr. Phelps looked all smug, like his unit hook had worked. Well, it had. We were interested, invested, sitting up. He then explained how the debate would work. We would argue for or against these quotes. Simple. Hands flew up left and right, not mine. One kid said, "Who can't get in? You mean immigrants? Look, we're all immigrants. Seriously, we should just give the country back to the Native Americans." I nodded. I mean, she had a point. Yeah, but then what happens to all of us? There are like 500 million people in the United States. Where are we all supposed to go, huh? A girl in the front row asked. Another student raised his hand. Well, those quotes you showed kind of raise a good point. If people think they can just like keep getting in, then yeah, it's never going to stop. You know what? We should build a wall. A guy in the back jumped in next. Well, I don't know about the wall, and I'm not against immigrants or whatever, but they should come educated and like without diseases. Diseases? Wow. Totally, two other guys joined in. That's totally unfair. Didn't Europeans bring over smallpox or whatever? A guy by the door asked. Whatever, we're talking about today, the girl beside me said. Don't whatever me, doorboy said. All the voices started to blend in, and I couldn't tell who was saying what. I just know that the next comment was from the kid in front of me. I'm sorry, but this is just wrong. You can't deny people their human rights. They go through all that trouble to get here. And then what? We spray tear gas on them when they're steps from the border? Or we're just going to send them back? If I slouched any lower, I'd fall out of my seat. Then Mr. Phelps did something I abhorred, vocab word. He called on me directly. "Miss Cruz, do you have anything you'd like to add?" Oh, crap. No, I said fast. You sure? He was so aggy. I dug my nails into my thighs. Yup. Now everyone was staring at me. Mr. Phelps squatted beside my desk like he was my personal coach. The class may seem hard now, but stick with it, he said in a low voice. Then he stood up and clicked to the next screen, some pie chart with statistics. Humiliation complete. I flipped up my hood. Hard? I was used to hard. Like 2 weeks worth of laundry in one day because mom never left the couch anymore. Like standing over Christopher and Benjamin until they brushed their teeth and flossed. But explaining my perspective on immigration to a bunch of white kids in a richy rich school, that wasn't hard. Nah, that was just annoying. So I'll end there. That's Liliana's voice for you. Thanks for letting me read.
Yeah, thanks for reading for us. I was jotting down a couple of notes while you were reading. I remember reading that chapter in the book, and it was one of those that kind of hit, and I was like, wow, like this happened in real life. Like people do say comments like this all the time, and sometimes you don't know how to respond. Like as Latina, you're like, we're not like that. Like, you're just building that stereotype that we're like that, and like the diseases. I was like, what? That doesn't even make any sense. Like, why would you even say that? And like it just got me upset because, like immigrants in the United States, they're, they do so much work, and I feel like they don't get the appreciation that they should. And it just like it hits home. Sorry, I have a baby in my house, but it just hits home because like I have a bunch of immigrants in my family, and they work so hard, and just I hear people say this all the time. It just really affects me personally. But my question, at least to like immigration and stuff, is why did you pick up, and what was the behind it affect the main character so closely, like meaning with her family?
Yeah, you mean the topic of immigration?
Yes.
Yes.
And deportation as well.
Yeah, deportation. Yeah, definitely. Chimamanda Adichie, this author, she has this TED Talk, and maybe you've all seen it before. It's called The Danger of the Single Story. And in that talk, she shares how stereotypes about a group of people aren't necessarily wrong. It's that they're incomplete. So they're only one story of many. And part of our work as artists, as activists, and as people in the world, right? Citizens of the world, is to constantly question what we're being tossed, right? We can't just consume what is on our feed and Instagram, what's on the news, what is on the headline, right? We have to be like critical and thinking about like, well, okay, maybe this is one story, but that's not the complete picture, right? You have to like zoom out, and you have to, it's like you're only getting a piece of the puzzle. And so reading is a way of getting more pieces to the puzzle. Like, hold up, like, okay, that's what you think, that's one story maybe you heard from someone somewhere. But like you said, right, Destiny, there are immigrants in your family, there are immigrants in my family, they're doing so much for our society. Like, where are those stories? Like, we need more of those narratives to complicate that single story. So I would check out that TED Talk if you haven't already. It's incredible. And I think that I'm excited for this generation, your generation, because you have a lot to share, and I can't wait to see what you do. You're already doing it just by moderating this talk. I didn't do anything like this, and I just think it's so great. You could start a podcast, you could have a show, you could do so many things, but honestly, by just like sharing the book or sharing your experiences, like that's a lot. I'm looking at Danielle because before before we started recording, we were having this great conversation about reading and books. And I don't mean to put you on the spot again, Danielle, but I'd love for people to hear, what you had to say about reading the book and your experience. And I want to hear from Ashley and from Destiny, from all of you, to kind of toss it back to you. I'd just love to hear what your experience was like reading the book, and maybe other people can chime in too.
Well, when I got the book, I was I started reading it and I couldn't put it down. So, and my mom, I'm not really a reader, so I don't like to read that much. My mom seen me and she was like, reading. And so I actually once I got into the book, really, I was telling all my cousins and my aunt, I typed it in the group chat. I was like, you guys should read this book after me. And yeah,
That's incredible.
I was able to really connect.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Thank you for sharing that.
So with Danielle, a big reader myself, and also English, not English, but English wasn't my first language, so it has always been that barrier. But I'm not a big reader, but I absolutely love this book. It was also a really quick read, because I know a lot of people, they're talking about it's gonna take forever, but we were super last minute on this book, but it was surprising. I got it done in a month. And I related to so many things. I have bookmarks of things that I related to, and I was just this book is great. 10 out of 10 recommend.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I'm also not a big reader, and I love this book. To be honest, I haven't really read a full book in a long time, not gonna lie. And I was listening to the audiobook because I'm not a big reader, and my whole family was just like, what are you listening to? And I'm like, it's this book, you guys gotta read it. And I'm listening to it while I go to bed, and I was just like, I relate to everything. I'm sitting in my room by myself, just yep, happened to me. I really enjoyed reading this book. I'm probably gonna read it again.
Oh my God. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I did things similar to her, and I was literally reading it straight. I could not put it down. I did not, instead of listening to music, I rather listen to the book. I was listening to the book straight, and I feel with all the drama going on in the book, it just made it more and more interesting. Oh, this is going on in her life. Oh, the Dustin thing, all the Jay thing, this, that, and the third, and piecing things together. It's really a very interesting thing. And I very much connect to the book. It's something it makes me very happy to see somebody so similar to me in the book. And it just made me, I really love it. You did a great job. And especially sounding modern and sounding like a teenager, it was awesome. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you did a really good job. Make it now. When I feel everyone can relate to it. Because the stories that I read in books, sometimes they try to make it seem they're but they say weird things that don't make any sense, that us as sisters would never say. But you were on with everything.
Thank you all so much. That just really fills me up. It makes me want to write and write and write. I really am grateful to you. And the thing is with writing is every time you work on a new book, it's kind of scary. It's you're starting from the blank page all over again. But this is one that I really enjoyed writing, and I'm really enjoying doing Zoom events and school visits, because the book lives on in that way, right? You write it by yourself at your computer, and then now it gets to breathe and live in Liliana and Dustin and Jade, and so that feels good. And the next book that I wrote that will be out in summer 2022, it's also about a Latina character, and she is 16. Her name is Maya, and she lives in Guatemala City, and she's super into fashion. She wants to be a fashion designer, but she's really interested in trashion. And trashion is where you take recycled materials like a tablecloth or coffee filters or whatever, CDs, and you make garments out of them. And she's super into it. And she and her best friend and her boyfriend and she's got her whole life, but then they get into some trouble with the gangs in the capital, and she and her mother have to flee for the Mexico US border in the dead of night. And they get caught by Border Patrol and they get separated. And I won't tell you how it ends, but it's another story that I feel like I wanted to lift up and shine the light on, because a lot of people don't understand a lot of the complexities involved in the journey and the situation, right? But I also wanted it to be relatable. So she's into fashion and, you know, she's got the drama with the always best friend with drama and boy drama, you know, and but anyway, I'm excited about that one. And White Space, like I shared, these are personal essays, but I really go there in these. I mean, I worked on these essays for the last 10 years. One is about going on birth control and how, as a Latina, it was really hard for me to do that. And I went to a clinic to get birth control, and I used money from babysitting because I didn't want to use insurance. I didn't want my parents to know. I was going to like die if they found out. So I told the receptionist, please bill me at my college PO box, right? I was a freshman, I was 19. And she said, "You're in college?" And I thought, oh my God, she doesn't think I'm in college. And so then I go into the room and the nurses are talking in English about me. And I'm kind of like, what are you doing? I'm right here. And then one of them turns around and says, "Hablas inglés?" And I'm like, oh, wow. Like she just looked at me and assumed that I didn't speak English, right? And so all these things happened. I write about running away from home. That the summer after my sophomore year, I really wanted to live on Cape Cod. And my parents were like, no, you're going to live at home and you're going to work at Friendly's and you're going to share the car with your sister. And I'm like, no, I want to live on Cape Cod for the summer. And so I left. I took my bike and went in my friend's car. And it was really hard. It was like the hardest summer of my life because I made $6 an hour and my parents stopped talking to me. But I thought I was grown. I was independent, you know. And one night I remember I only had 50 cents and I had to buy a brownie for dinner. So I write about that in here. I write about going to Guatemala in my 20s, how I wanted to live there without my parents, because you know when you go with your parents, it's like they're like in charge and they're taking you to the tia and the tio. It's like, no, I wanted to be by myself living in Guatemala. And I studied Spanish because I wanted to really work on my grammar. And I wanted to write a novel. And I come home and I write about what it was like to re-enter society in New England, carrying all the stories and everything I had learned when I was living in Guatemala. So that's what these essays are about. They're also about whiteness, about language, about body image, about fitting in, about finding love, about finding my voice on the page, struggling to become a published author. And so there's a lot in there, and I'm excited for readers who read Don't Ask Me Where I'm From to maybe read these essays. And there's so much more. There's so much more I want to write. So we're all going to stay in touch and I'm going to keep you posted on everything. And I want to read what you write. So I don't know if we're moving to audience questions, or should I be reading the questions in the chat?
Oh, yeah, we are about to move to audience questions. And I was just wanted to say, like, the next book, it sounds so wonderful. I will be so open to reading it because I want to see your writing style. Like, it's great for a young adult, especially a high schooler. Like, I really relate to it. And to move on to the audience questions, one of them is, what advice would you give someone who feels out of place?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful question. I think feeling out of place, first of all, your feelings, whatever they are your feelings. So don't feel like they're right or they're wrong, or I shouldn't feel this. You feel what you feel. And so right away, honor that, accept that, validate your feelings. For me, writing helped tremendously because, like I said, the paper never talked back to me. The paper also never ran out of batteries, like phone or charger, whatever. It just was always there. And I felt better after I wrote. I felt like I let go of stuff that I was holding on to. And for someone who wants to fit in, I mean, I would say, do you have to fit in? You know, like who says you have to fit in? Like, do you really want to be like everybody else? Maybe push back on that and ask yourself, why do I feel like I need to be like a chameleon and change up whatever space I'm in? Why can't I be my full self, be self actualized, so that when I walk into any space, any room, any classroom, I'm me and I don't want to change who I am? I mean, to me, that is where Liliana is starting to get to by the end of the book. You know, at the beginning, she changes her name to Lily. She starts dressing differently. She feels like her body is too curvy all of a sudden. Her hair is too curly. Her, you know, the way she talks is too fast, all these things. And it's like, no, that's who you are. That's part of who you are. And you shouldn't feel like you have to change to fit in. That said, if you want to challenge yourself and fit in a space where it's like, I want to try that, you know, horseback riding thing, or I want to go to Vietnam or Africa. I'm going to try to fit in at college, like, because I want to go to college, you know, that's cool. That's a different thing. But I think just questioning yourself first, like, do I have to be like everybody else? Do I want to be like everybody else? Maybe not, probably not.
Okay, so next question. This is an audience question, but I also kind of want to know. Was Dustin based off of someone that you know personally, or you knew someone that had a Dustin? Because reading, he was an interesting character. And yeah, I'm just curious, like, what's the tea with Dustin?
Yeah, Dustin. He's like a composite character of lots of other people like Dustin that I've known. I did base him in general, like he started with like a type, like, you know, like, oh, okay, he's this like white boy who likes to date the METCO girls, and he thinks he's down, but then it's like he falls on his face, you know, it's just like all that. But then I had to make him specific because I didn't want him to be a trope, you know, or a caricature. So I added in the bit about his mother leaving the father, and they got divorced because she had an affair with another woman, you know. And I felt like I you don't usually see that, or maybe it's out there but you don't read about it. I also wanted him to have a brother who was traveling across country and have the map in their house, you know, all these little details. I kind of just wanted to make him, in writing, you want to go a mile deep, not a mile wide. And so by being very specific with him, I felt like he might be more relatable, more universal, but no one specific.
Another question is, what do you want people to take away from Don't Ask Me Where I'm From?
I love this question because I want people to, first of all, to books in general can be windows and mirrors, right? So for some people, they're going to be windows, like, oh, wow, I didn't know anything about this. This is a whole new experience. Oh, it's like that. Oh, I never thought about that, right? For other people, it's a mirror. It's like, yep, that's how it is. Oh, that's like me. I see myself in this character, right? So either one is fine. I think books can be both, right? But I also want readers at the end of the book to feel a little bit more, if not a lot more, like proud of who they are and where they come from, and understand that asking someone, where are you from, is not inherently a bad question. It's the way that it's asked, right? So if you're asking someone, if you're asking a person of color that question, where are you from, understand that it has implications and it has a weight to it. But also understand that whatever they answer, accept that answer. Like, you know, and I think it's a beautiful thing to want to know more about each other's backgrounds, but it should be two ways. And again, if somebody says, like, I'm from Newton, like, leave it at that. Don't be like, where are you really, really from? Because what you're doing in that case is you're otherizing. You're making them feel like they gotta be from somewhere because they sure as hell ain't from here, right? And it's like, no, I was born in Brookline, like, do you want my birth certificate? I think so it depends. So at the end, I would love for people to feel like they understand the gravitas of that question a little bit more, but also feel curious about where they're from. Maybe like talk to their parents, their grandparents, their family, like, how did we come to Newton? Like, how does our family reside in Massachusetts now? Like, what's our story?
Yeah, I feel like when people definitely ask, like, oh, where you're from, I feel like sometimes they don't mean it with a bad intention, but
Yeah.
like, it's when you're from like a foreign, like, they just assume by the way you look, like, oh, you're definitely not from the United States or from somewhere else. And then they'll ask you like in such a bad way, like, oh, where are you from? Like, where are you from? Like, and I'll be like, oh, I'm from Dominican Republic. They'll be like, oh, and then they have like that sus look. I'm like ask it in a better way. Like, I know so many people who have so many stories like, yeah, someone asked me where I'm from because they thought I looked Indian. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, when I first came to South, like, everyone thought I was Indian for some reason. I don't know why, but a lot of people said that. And I was like, I'm not. Like, nothing wrong with the Indian
Right.
person. But they just ask it like the delivery of like the way you ask. It's like, ask it in a better way.
Yeah.
But we're going to move on to audience questions just because we're kind of in a time crunch because I think school is ending soon. Looking on here. Okay, I'm currently writing a book, sophomore, and my life is stressful and busy. What's the best advice you have for me that helps me get my book out there as fast as possible? And what's your opinion on self-publishing as an author?
Yes, great. Okay, here we go. Ready? Write this down. Grub Street Creative Writing Center. If you don't know about it already, write it down, Google it. It's going to change your life. It's the largest creative writing center in the country, and we're lucky because it's in Boston. And right now, everything's virtual anyway. They have free classes for teenagers interested in creative writing on Saturdays. And their program is called YAWP, YAWP, Young Adult Writers Program. So they have classes all the time. In the summer, you can take week-long classes. They also have a fellowship program that's 3 weeks. So basically, if you get accepted to that fellowship program, remember fellowship, they pay you to write. And it's crazy. It's amazing. And I think it's partially virtual this summer, but so they mail you a huge box with all the materials that you're going to need. Journals and fun pens and books and paper. I mean, I wish I had something like that. Anyway, they have classes all summer. So if you don't get into the fellowship, that's fine. You can take another class. They have scholarships too. So like, never feel like, oh, I can't do it because of money. No way. There are other programs in Boston, like 826 Boston. There's also a program at Emerson College called Write Boston. And there's also a program, it's more for journalism, but it's called, no, Write Boston is a journalism one. The one at Emerson is called Emerson Writes. And so these are opportunities for you to get involved and learn more about how to get your work published.
Going on the topic of writing, how did you deal with if a publisher rejects your book or like a writing that you did? Like, what do you do? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Yep. Writing and publishing are separate things. It's helpful if you think about it that way. And Stephen King actually described it this way. Writing is what you do with your door closed, right? So you're in your creativity, you're in your head, you're in your computer, you're dreaming and making stuff up. Publishing is what you do with the door open, meaning I now need to revise what I wrote so that the rest of the world can read it, right? It's not just for me anymore. It's not just me at my computer. It's like a book is like out there. So it's helpful to, first of all, think of them as different things. When you're writing in your journal, when you're writing in your notes on your phone, whatever, Google Docs, like that's for you. But if you want to write it to be published, then you have to go through the revision process. You have to get readers to give you feedback. You have to really take criticism and understand that it's not personal. Think about it as like water off a duck's back. Like, okay, I'm going to take what's helpful and I'm not going to take what's not helpful and I'm going to keep it moving. Because if you start to get stuck with like, oh my God, they didn't like that paragraph. Oh my God, I'm not meant to be a writer. Oh, it's going to be a different thing. It's going to be a long road. And I wish I had learned that earlier, that it's not that serious. You can come back to your writing. You can revise it, right? Every published author that I know, every single one has revised their work. So it's just how it is.
And we'll move into the last audience question because we think it can get some people thinking. So what are some writers that, or who are some writers that inspire you? What books are you currently reading now and enjoying?
Oh, I want to tell you about this book. Okay, this is called Your Corner Dark. Clearly, I've been reading it, flagging pages. It's by Desmond Hall. It's set in Jamaica, and it's about this teenager, Frankie. He has a scholarship to go to college in Florida, but then all this stuff happens. His father gets shot by a stray bullet, and he has to pay for the hospital. And so he has to decide whether to give up his scholarship or help his dad. Anyway, he's in a tough spot, but I love this book. It's like a page turner. It's like kind of like a thriller. So I love reading YA. I mean, I love Angie Thomas's work, The Hate You Give. This one, Felix Ever After. I love this book too. Case and Calendar. It's about a trans teenager who then discovers more about their identity and discovers that they are a demi-boy. And this is something I didn't know much about before reading this book. And they really want to get into Brown University. And it's just like, it's another page turner. It's also so funny. And I could spend all day, every day reading and writing and talking about books. So maybe I should start a blog or something. But follow me on Instagram. I don't know how to tell you guys. It's at @JDeLeonWriter. At @JDeLeonWriter on Instagram and Twitter. And I'll post lots of information on there about the next books and everything. And if you want to know more about Whitespace or anything. But I think we have an activity with the QR code. I'm so excited to read what people write for that.
Yeah, so we'll move into the activity. I'll definitely give you a follow. Everybody watching, go follow her immediately. So we are going to simulate an activity that was done in the book. So it's not really a spoiler, but read the book, like I said before. So basically the activity is going to be a Padlet, which I think there's a QR code somewhere, a link was sent out, and it's asking 3 different questions. Oh, thank you for the screen share. So yeah, so go ahead, scan the code, type in the link, whatever suits you, and go ahead and add some responses and we will read through a few. So we'll give you time to do that, everyone who's watching.
I love this. Thanks for doing this because yeah, they do this in the book. It's part of a scene when they're at this assembly. And yeah, I won't spoil it, and you all know from reading the book that the assembly doesn't really go as planned. But that's life. Sometimes it doesn't go as planned, right?
So while people are thinking about how they would answer these questions, know that I've been kind of taking notes on all your awesome recommendations, Jennifer. So the Grub Street, the TED Talk, your book, of course, Your Corner Dark, all those things. And we'll make sure we get that information out to people so you don't have to like write it down. And of course, your Instagram and Twitter accounts. So we'll like send it out to everybody so they can share with their students if they're in a class. And so don't worry about writing it all down.
Great. Thank you for doing that.
Students, while we're waiting, were there any other questions that were on your document that you'd like to ask?
I think there was. I can just like jump around. So there was one, someone wanted to know about your choice of you like writing pieces of the book in Spanish without like giving any further context as to what they mean.
Yes. Basically, I'll try to be brief because I could go off on this. But basically, when you're writing in the perspective of a character, especially in first person, and you're so close to that character, right? That Liliana is narrating the story. If she knows what the words in Spanish mean, then there's no need for her to translate it because who is she translating it for, right? So it's a little bit of a philosophical question, but on a practical level, I felt like I really wanted to, again, center her experience and maybe have readers who don't understand Spanish feel a little bit like they have to do a little bit of work to figure out what it is that she's referring to in Spanish. And by work, I don't mean like they need to stop reading and go get a dictionary and look up the word, but work by reading context clues in that scene, right? Studying the actions and inferring basically what the Spanish words might mean. Because I didn't want to privilege the white monolingual reader. I really kind of wanted to privilege the bilingual reader of English and Spanish. So that's my brief take on that. But I'm loving reading some of these posts. Yeah. Yeah, multiracial and biracial. There are lots of students that I've met over the last few months who identify in this way, and it can be hard in the sense that you're grappling with multiple identities, right? And kind of trying to figure out who you are, where you fit in the world. In the way Liliana is, she, like me, I feel like is bicultural, right? You have two cultures. I'm American, but I'm also Latina. And growing up, I felt like absolutely I was both of them. And I would never want to choose. I'm both. And the author, Julia Alvarez, says that it's in that hyphen, right? Dominican American, Haitian American, Asian American, that it's that hyphen that's like a raft and you're constantly moving in between those two identities. So I just love how she always described that. Afro Latina, yes. Things you never want to hear again, go back to Mexico, go back to your ghetto, stay in Boston. Oh, that's horrible. I'm sorry that you are experiencing that. But how can we be allies to assist you? Learn and understand. Hear from other narratives. Absolutely. Absolutely. Another Latina hearing, go back to your country. Oh, people need to understand that this isn't a term that is taken lightly and can really offend someone. Absolutely. Haitian American, something that we can do to be allies and assist you. Understand you never know what someone is going through. So try and be as nice as you can. Yep. Definitely. And that's where reading comes in. I know I'm a writer, so obviously I'm a fan of reading, but I do think that reading makes us more empathetic and makes us more understanding. I love this. Listen, listen, listen. Yep. Be open to stories that challenge your biases and learn from them. 100%. I think stories can change the world. They really can. Stories are so powerful. And what happens when we hear a story over and over again is that we start to just believe it's true. So something that starts out as a joke or a stereotype or, oh my God, I was just kidding, right? All these kinds of things. They start to take on meaning and weight. And we need to do the opposite. We need to smash those stories. Wow. Don't make assumptions. Absolutely. I mean, that's everything right there. It's just like, yeah, don't assume you know what someone's going through. Don't assume that you understand how they're feeling. Don't assume that you can tell where they're from, where they're not from, how they grew up, what their home life is like, all of that. One of my favorite things to do is to, start speaking in French. And people are like, what? Or I used to do that when I was teaching 7th grade. I would just start speaking in French, and then all the students would look at me like, huh? And you surprise people. I think that that's kind of why I like writing too. It's because, and sometimes I still face microaggressions. I've been in spaces where I'm the writing instructor or the professor, and this hasn't happened for a while, but it happened where sometimes students would come into the classroom and they'd say hello, and then they'd say to me like, oh, do you know when the professor is going to get here? And I'd say like, I am the professor, sit down, no, but it's kind of like, why do you assume that I'm not the professor? Well, lots of reasons, right? Maybe you haven't had many experiences with a Latinx professor. Maybe images of Latina women in the media are portrayed as the maid or the help or, the car mechanic, all these kinds of tropes. And so again, part of what we need to do is not make assumptions and be open to a variety of narratives. These are really great. Wow. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, reading these, this is incredible. Like, Jen, I don't want to cut you off. Please keep going. But this is incredible to read. I can say from a public library's perspective, I don't get to see you in many of these ways, and it's so wonderful to read about you and to learn more about you. I mean, to be honest, I deal with a lot of tweens a lot of the time, which is awesome. There's nothing wrong with tweens, but this is incredible.
Yeah.
And it has been such a wonderful hour and a half with you. Students, do you want to say anything before we go? I know the bell's about to ring, so I want to be aware of that. Yeah, go ahead, Destiny.
I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to talking to all of us and just having a conversation. I have not seen a lot of or heard from a lot of like Latin speakers at South, so it was really nice to like have someone that's Latin and can talk about like their experience and their book. There also like isn't a lot of books like characters, and I'm always like going on a hunt in the library looking for more Latin writers. So I just want to say thank you for taking your time writing this book and making it interesting and good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. These great questions and taking the time to moderate. Stay in touch.
I also wanted to add that like with this pilot, I'm reading through it right now. It's like I'm even learning a lot of things that I did not know before this. And I just hope that everybody listening like can go back to this Padlet and like actually read through what everybody's saying and like learn something new.
Yeah, and my last words are also just, again, like Destiny was just saying, thank you for writing this book. Never heard a book about, I don't identify as Latina, but I am in METCO, and this is my this is my everyday, and it's been my everyday for almost 12 years. So to see a story out there like that is it means a lot to me. So thank you for taking the time.
Oh, I want to hug you guys through the screen.
Words is thank you so much. I will definitely be reading the book again and more of your books as they come out.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to our awesome students for having the courage to do this. We so appreciate your presence. And of course, Jennifer, we appreciate yours. And Megan, like the public library is the one that brought this up. And so we wouldn't have had this without them. So
I mean, I love the collaboration. I love, like I was saying before, like, I'm not sure we ever had such like both high schools like commit to working together in such a way. And it's been incredible. Like, I don't know, I like kept like my like mouth was wide open the whole time.
Yeah, I know. My cheeks hurt.
Yeah, I was like smiling. Yeah, so thank you everybody. Thank you audience for sharing your experiences. It's been great. And share this with people at school if they didn't get a chance to make it, you know.
Yeah,
Right.
read over the summer.
Yeah.
Get your credit.
And read all of Jen's books because they're awesome.
Yes, they're in all of our libraries. So if
Yes,
anyone needs
yeah, we have lots of copies for those students out there who haven't read it. Come grab one.
Great. Thank you all so much. This is wonderful.
you. Bye.